Hi, and welcome to A Cooking Date with Nate. Today we're going to be making albondigas, a famous Mexican meatball stew. And this is my variation of it. It's a little different than the regular way, but it's very tasty. So you're going to need a few ingredients. We have bay leaf, tomato paste, hominy, carrots, black pepper, chili, ground red chili, potatoes, green onions, red and green bell peppers, cilantro, limes, mushrooms, tomatillos, chorizo, white onion, rice, garlic, shredded cabbage and sour cream for on top, and then shredded collard greens, which add a lot to it. And then we have ground beef and ground hot Portuguese sausage, along with some chicken broth. Now that's all you need, other than one big pot and a nice pan and some wax paper. Once you've got all your ingredients, heat up a nice big pot for making stew. We're going to start off with the white onion, the chorizo, pork or beef, I prefer pork, and the fresh garlic. Get the meat cooking with the vegetables and the garlic for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll be on to our next step. Once you've got your onions and your chorizo and garlic going for about 5 to 7 minutes, you're ready to add in the chicken broth and wait until it boils. I used about 2 large cans. Now is a good time to add your spices. I'm going to go with red pepper and black pepper for mine. Red pepper, black pepper, and 2 to 3 bay leaves. Now we need to wait for the soup to boil. As our soup begins to boil, we add in the rest of our ingredients. We're going to start with 1 small can of tomato paste, mushrooms, if you like mushrooms. The vegetables are really up to your discretion. Potatoes, definitely a good filler. Along with, I use 1 can of hominy. Now, Juanita's is a very good brand. Tomatillos. Red and green bell peppers. Cilantro, carrots, green onions, and depending on how spicy your guests like it, jalapenos or red chili. Now my guests don't like it too spicy tonight, so I'm going to take it easy, but we're still going to put a couple in. Mix it all up and let it boil for about 20 minutes. We'll go ahead and get started on the meatballs. While the soup's cooking together, we're making the meatballs now. I have the ground beef and the hot Portuguese sausage, or any kind of Jimmy Dean sausage works really well. Got about 3 eggs, depending on how much meat you have. It helps the meatballs stay together. And about a cup of rice. So you mix those all up, and then we'll start forming the meatballs. Make sure it's all mixed really well. Stepping back to our soup real quick, now that all the vegetables and broth are hot, make sure to get your collard greens cut into strips like this to kind of simulate a noodle-like substance, and mix those in. Collard greens take a little while to cook, but you want them not to get too mushy because you want them to have a little bit of texture to them. So mix those in, and then we'll go back to working on our meatballs. Now we're ready to make our meatballs. The eggs, the rice, the sausage, and the ground beef are all mixed up. Next step, grab a pan or a working surface and line it with wax paper so it doesn't get all gross. Now some people make their meatballs real small. That doesn't cut it for me. I like my albondigas to be very big. So, grab a handful. I'd say a little bit bigger than a golf ball. The rice puffs up, but the meat shrinks. So, the best way to do it is to throw it in your hand to get all the air pockets out, because the air pockets are what makes the meatballs fall apart. After that, roll into a ball, about that size, place. Once these are all done, we'll be back to show you the next step. Now that we got our meatballs formed and the soup is nice and hot, take one of these or a big spoon. Be careful not to break them, because the meatballs, they sink down to the bottom and they float when they're done. Now once we drop them in, we're going to cover and let it cook for about 25 minutes. Then our soup's all good to go. So one at a time. Once you got all the meatballs in, just cover it up and now we wait. Now, if you notice, the meatballs are beginning to float, which means they're almost done. The soup is finally almost ready to be eaten. It's gonna be amazing. For serving the soup, you're going to want to have something to scoop out the meatballs and vegetables with, along with a ladle for getting the broth, because that's where most of the flavor comes from, since it's all been cooking for quite a while. Now, I usually go ahead and take a few meatballs, dig to the bottom, because that's where all the vegetables are. You want to get that. This is some real good stuff. Then, go ahead and get a bunch of broth so your food stays hot and has a bunch of flavor. And then on to the final step. Most people like to put a little bit of shredded cabbage, just a tiny dab of some sour cream, and a couple squeezed limes in there for some flavor. Kind of like similar to menudo or pozole. Mix it all up and you're good to go. Let's try a little piece of the meatballs. Wow, that is amazing. Give you guys a better view. once you try it and your friends try it, you're only gonna have one thing left to say for the next week or so. And that word is Albondigas!
Should stay there a little longer.